Hi, I'm Robin and welcome to my design studio. Today we're going to glaze a piece of Anaglypta wallpaper as a sample to give to the painters who will actually do the work on a ceiling for my client. I have cut a sample piece about 2 feet square. It includes the whole repeat. So here's the first part, here's the second part. Normally, when you do the actual work, it's already glued to the wall. But right now, it's not glued to anything. It's very slippery and curly, so we're going to tape down the corners. The materials that you need to do this project are a chip brush, a pair of gloves, a clean container for mixing, glaze medium. Floetrol is helpful. It extends the working time. And then whatever color of paint you want to use. The chip brush that I have selected is an old one. I've used this multiple times and these bristles are worn down beautifully. So this gets down into the cracks without depositing too much paint anywhere. So I really like an old chip brush. I'm not happy if I have to buy a brand new one. So we're going to start out by putting on gloves. I've already mixed the glazing liquid, so I've stirred this up pretty well. If that's been sitting on the shelf, it really settles and separates, so you definitely want to stir that, give it a really good stir. I'm going to pour this about half full. The painters will want plenty to experiment with because they will have to match the density of this. So we'll wipe this up a little bit. Put in my paint, and I'm going to start mixing this gradually because I really don't know what color I want this to be. So I'm going to pour probably a tablespoon in, maybe 2 tablespoons. I don't think a tablespoon's enough. We'll wipe that off with the brush. Set the brush down over here. And take a new stir stick and we'll mix that up. It looks like 2 tablespoons will be pretty good. So this is what this is looking like. It mixes in really well if your paint is all fresh. It just mixes right together. It's very easy. Now my painters are painting on a huge sloped ceiling. I don't want a dry edge. If you end up with dry glaze and you work back into it, you end up with a really ugly line. So I'm going to just drop a little bit of Floetrol, it was about a teaspoonful, into this mix and stir that in. That's going to keep that from getting a dry edge. All right, that's all stirred in. I'll mix my brush in a little bit. We're going to give this kind of a fairly liberal coat, and we're going to work really fast. And I'm scrubbing this in so that all the areas are getting covered. And I can tell this is going to be very hard work for the painters because this scrubs in kind of hard. Sometimes people paint the base of this and then the glaze goes on a little easier, goes on a little difficult when it's not painted first. It's totally fine to do it this way. It's just a little more work. So everywhere where I've gone, I'm going back in and making sure that that edge is wet. I'm going to work at an angle toward the other part, and you would do this same technique if you were doing this on the wall. It would work on an angle and then back into what you've already put on, so nothing gets dried out. You can hear the tooth as these little bristles get into all the little textures. The whole back of this is textured in like a pin dot pattern. which will look like linen when we get this rubbed off. There's a spot I missed, so I'm going to go back into it. I can go back into it because I left that wet edge. I've got some puddles of paint. You can go back and pick up some of those because you don't need that wet edge anymore. You already worked past it. If you're doing a really large area, you really need to work with a partner. So one person is putting it on and the other person is right behind them lifting it off. And that's the most successful way to do this. Professionals do it that way. Do-it-yourself can do it that way too. Take a tip from the pros. All right, I'm hitting the end. Drop this brush back here. This is woven cotton. It's an old sheet, and I'm just going to start rubbing this off. You can see what a beautiful finish you're going to get here. Now I'm going to see that's a lot of paint there. This isn't as absorbent as a t-shirt, so we'll have to turn the edge often. You can rub off as much as or as little as you like. Here I feel like I rubbed too much off. I'm going to put some back and rub a little lighter. That Floetrol kept this really nice and workable, so I'm able to go over the whole piece. Now that's all wet, so I'm going to flip that to a drier side. Now you want to check for any marks, places that you left behind, like right here looks like I missed that. I'm going to gently dab that. This looks like that could be cleaned up, and I'm touching it very, very lightly. This one is not as light as the others. Pull that back. Pull that off. And there we have our finished sample. Thank you for watching.